Hello everyone and welcome to this Oracle Applications Day 2020 session. Today I will discuss some of the learnings which we've come across sometimes very late in the day when organizations embark on their cloud implementation or transformation journey. I'm going to cover five. There were more, but I wanted to cover what I saw as the most common topics, issues, or misconceptions which can have the biggest impact if you don't get them clear and understood early in your cloud journey. A short bio for myself. My name is Ken MacMahon and I'm Head of Technology and Innovation here at Version 1. I've worked for more than 20 years in Version 1. Prior to working in Version 1, I worked in a number of multinationals across technology implementation and consultancy roles. I've worked with Oracle technology and Oracle ERP for about 25 years. When I started my career as a developer, DBA, and later an Oracle ERP solutions architect and enterprise architect, lots of customer projects across UK and Ireland. And as the world and our customers have moved more and more into cloud over the past 5 years, particularly, I focus more and more on this topic, delivering projects, providing help and guidance to customers. My role today, which I started about 2 years ago, is broader and more cloud and partner agnostic. But to be honest, although many of the lessons or observations that I will make are very Oracle specific, you can translate them to most all other cloud providers. So before I start, I would like to cover some terminology, as I appreciate that not everyone in this session will necessarily have a technical background. And don't worry, it's not going to be a deep technical session, but getting some of these topics agreed can be an important first step as you embark on a cloud learning journey. It would also help you reference back if I slip into using these acronyms. I've chosen Oracle's own definition, but they cross well with the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the NIST definitions, if people come across those, and other cloud providers' definitions as well, hence why I chose them. Also, I've included some typical Oracle services which people may come across when they implement or explore where they're going with cloud, particularly Oracle. So I hope some familiar terms at least. So software as a service, or SaaS, a software delivery model in which the cloud provider hosts the customer's applications at their location. The customer accesses their applications over the internet rather than paying and maintaining their own computing infrastructure. The customer takes advantage of subscription to the services pay-as-you-go basis. And I'll give you some examples there. Oracle Cloud ERP, Fusion HCM, Cloud HCM, Cloud SCM. Platform as a Service, or PaaS, enables customers to access the developer tools they need to build and manage mobile and web applications without investing in or maintaining the underlying infrastructure. The provider hosts the infrastructure and middleware components, and the customer accesses those services via web browser. Some of the Oracle examples you may have come across in conversations: Autonomous Data Warehouse, Analytics Cloud, Integration Cloud. And the last tier of cloud service, Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. IaaS enables customers to access infrastructure service on an on-demand basis through the internet. The key advantage is the cloud provider hosts the infrastructure components that can provide the compute, the storage, and network, so their subscribers can run their workloads in the cloud. The Oracle Cloud would be very much Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI would be termed. So that's the definitions. So a little bit of context for UK and I. So what are we seeing in conversations on cloud? Considering we work across a good representative cohort of sectors, requirements, industries, and indeed geographies across UK and Ireland, kind of differences. I'm glad to say, and partly why I put this presentation together, a good degree of commonality. Customers, such as I'm sure many of you who are listening to this, are being bombarded from all angles, be that support partners, business and technical stakeholders in your business, SIs, on cloud. And most are in agreement that the future is cloud. They see disadvantages, requirements for their business, which are more and more in certain areas, can only be fulfilled by cloud. They're seeing benefits, competitive edge, speed to implement, greater ability for mobile, and more recently, disruptive technologies like machine learning, AI, that can only get through cloud. But also, many raise concerns, questions, or make assumptions, or have gaps in their understanding, and at times not being able to question some of the tsunami of information they see. So hopefully this presentation will help in that regard. And additionally, What we are seeing specifically in terms of cloud for applications, be that SaaS applications, cloud ERP, cloud HCM. Let me segue for a moment to just give a view of where cloud is in that world, in the SaaS world specifically. The message again, coming very consistent and commonplace across customers, verticals, UK and I. Cloud ERP, steady and stable, adding more functionality all the time. HCM speeding along, thriving with lots of competition. SEM, there and growing, but expect some bumps on the way. A little later to get going, to be fair. Certainly in the Oracle context. Enterprise asset management, proceed with caution. Probably not an area that we have as much experience on, but that's generally what the market would say. And as a matter of fact, it's not only the case for Oracle, but for other vendors too. If we look at this 2018 survey by Gartner, if you're coming today with a discussion around cloud and ERP, all flavors, be that SaaS or infrastructure and platform for apps unlimited, well, what you see from this is you're not alone, okay? Everyone is pretty much on that journey to later, lesser or greater extent. So back to some of the points about cloud. Yes, there's definitely facets and advantages cloud, but there come with questions, there come with concerns. If we talk about speed to implement, then well, what about the new things? What have I got to learn? How does it connect? If we talk about control, control changes, but how? What elements? Who's in control of what? Lower cost. Yes, but what about the multiple environments or pods that I may need over and above the initial sticker price? How are these priced? Competitive edge. Yes, but can I get what I need today? Can I get the reporting? Does it do that I have today in my existing system? Automatic software updates. But what happens if there's a bug in release? Or I don't want to test every quarter with these releases coming out every quarter. Is there something I could do in a SaaS world? I was just touching last one, security. It's last and by no means least. So when you say the cloud is more secure, does that mean me as a head of IT, as a COO, doesn't need to worry about loss of our customer data any longer? So for most people, there are questions or clarifications they would like to have. So I'm going to try and address some of these through the rest of my presentation, providing some practical and real-world scenarios or advice to help you get more comfortable with the topics or know where to go next. So the 5 key ones I'm going to address, be the observations or questions or misconceptions, are the most common ones we come across. It's not an exhaustive list, as I said, but I will give you a 6th one at the end to help address the ones I don't address for you here. So stick with me to the end. So you see here, SaaS delivers an end-to-end solution for your business. Be that HCM, ERP. Regularly heard at sales demonstrations. Cloud provider manages it all. Generally heard at a cloud first and cloud only type discussion. Cloud is lower cost. Typically heard from SIs who are compensated to sell you cloud. The cloud is more secure, the thing that most CFOs, CIOs, and CEOs hope for. On the other hand, you hear from blockers of cloud in organizations who vehemently dispute this to maintain the status quo. Or the last and 5th one, our biggest worry in IT. But in reality, well, let's see, it doesn't mean less work for IT. So number 1, so never in looking at cloud or HCM, ERP, across be that NHS Trust, major high street banks, high-tech manufacturing, major utilities, have I seen an ERP system that stands completely self-contained? It typically integrates or depends on data is part of business processes which can extend across from third-party internal systems, external system, bespoke system. So to think you will put in SaaS, be that ERP or HCM, and not affect in some way these upstream and downstream systems is a myth. This could impact data exchanges, reporting, or even how you will interconnect securely with these. Or indeed, taking the bespoke example, it may imply or require an additional set of cloud services from the past world to go along side by side with your SaaS end-to-end solution. So ignore this one at your peril. And before, in somewhat of a segue, when I hear typically in this type of conversation the comments of, oh, we're going vanilla or we're going back to out of the box functionality. So firstly, and let me be absolutely clear here, I applaud and I encourage you to do so. But do be realistic in accepting or taking on the import of what you want to achieve here. It will mean changes to people and processes. You may have unique reporting or portal data requirements or indeed IP that is unique to your business. SaaS will not deliver that for you out of the box. Despite where you start in the journey, there's a very high probability that you will end up with some form of customization or extension, or as perhaps as you heard it called out today or in cloud conversations, PaaS extensions. So our real world of island versus enclave probably looks closer to the following from Oracle. This is not a problem or a block to what you're going to do, just an acceptance of reality. In this, we've got a mix of on-premise third-party and applications unlimited and cloud applications. We've got third-party applications to integrate to. And we've got integrations to partners, be that customers and suppliers up in the top right. Some or all of this will get disturbed when you introduce cloud into the equation, the big red cloud in the middle of this diagram. So now, when you look at our island, and don't worry too much about the detail here, we need to start thinking about how we will integrate, be that third-party cloud applications back to on-premise, to other cloud solutions, to our existing corporate data warehouse. So that SaaS as the end-to-end vision breaks down and needs a little deeper analysis by your team to ensure you don't find or consider some unplanned side effect of your cloud implementation, the island. All these are solvable and lots of integrations are provided, for example, for SaaS by Oracle out of the box. They just need to be properly planned for and follow the implications for the next consideration, which is about the cloud provider and who manages what. So take away from this first one, anticipate how cloud will integrate in your situation. Consider downstream and upstream. Consider connections to the outside world. Multiple clouds, you will probably end up with multiple cloud services in your solution. Platform as a service and software as a service. Draw it and share it. Commit it to paper, share it with people. You won't get it right the first time, but a picture paints 1,000 words and will help you explain how this is going to sit in your organization. Second one is cloud provider manages it all. Oh, if that were the case, how much easier all our lives would be. Who's responsible for what when it comes to cloud is very much dependent on what tier of service you take from the cloud provider, infrastructure, platform, or SaaS, and the T's and C's of the terms and conditions of the cloud provider. I gave you Oracle's definition for SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS. But that's not necessarily how their cloud contract, their SLAs, etc., are termed. Very understandably, organizations and people are sometimes surprised when they embark on a cloud journey to have misunderstood or not clearly explained to them where responsibility begins and ends with cloud. And as part of this is the definition used for cloud versus the reality at times. So let's take an example. So in the following slides, to try to clarify the point, I'm going to look at eBusiness Suite. That could be JD Edwards or PeopleSoft, but I'll use eBusiness Suite on OCI, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It could be Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. It could have been Azure or AWS, but Oracle for Oracle workloads. So let's go with OCI as one scenario versus Oracle Cloud ERP SaaS. And let's see the different responsibilities across the organizations. So firstly, generally, the rule, if we look at this, in the middle, you will see the components simplified that go to make up a typical business solution: operating system, middleware, application layer. All these could be provided by varying degrees by infrastructure, platform, or SaaS. On the left-hand side, you will see the responsibility the cloud provider has. Oracle, in this example, for SaaS, PaaS, and IaaS, increasing more and more in the move from the bottom infrastructure as they go further up into PaaS and SaaS. And on the right-hand side, you can see for the same levels or tiers of cloud, the responsibility for the customer has, depending, again, same implementation, SaaS versus PaaS versus SaaS. And you'll see the reversed. So let's see how this plays out for our scenario. So Oracle eBusiness could be JD Edwards or PeopleSoft on cloud infrastructure as a service. Oracle are responsible simply for providing the compute and storage elements for you, but little else. You're responsible for everything else beyond that: OS hardening, patching of eBusiness Suite, security of data backups, etc. So for a cloud solution, principally an IaaS, the responsibility in the overall solution for Oracle does not go far up the stack, versus it comes well down the stack for you, the customer. For SaaS, we take the opposite, the other example where you might decide to go with a SaaS solution. For SaaS, Oracle is responsible for providing lots of components: operating system, middleware, data layer, application components. You don't ever get or need access to the operating system or database, any of that, in a SaaS solution. So Oracle are responsible for patching, upgrades, backup, securing everything. At the other end, in an Oracle Cloud solution on SaaS, the responsibility then in the overall solution for Oracle goes way up the stack, and it comes less so for the customer, you. And more crucially, if we reference back to our island and enclave analogy for consideration of one, you could at the core of your implementation have a SaaS solution, but you could also have PaaS components in the mix. In that scenario, you'll have different SLAs responsibilities between you, the customer, and Oracle for different components of the overall solution. So in the example I show on the table here, this is for a major UK bank who are implementing SaaS solution, but had significant PaaS components and was trying to help them develop their cloud operating model. And we need to reflect the different components and who was responsible for what. So key takeaway from number 2, consider all the components of your solution: platform, infrastructure, SaaS. Look at the bill of materials for cloud, what you're procuring or what you've been provided, and read the cloud provider's corresponding SLAs, contracts, and terms and conditions. Cloud is lower cost. This is a bit of a sweeping statement, but one I regularly hear and see. On the face of it, it is, if I tell you you can run one CPU compute server with 16 gig of RAM and 2 terabytes for £50 a month, and switch that on and off as and when you choose, that sounds good, versus acquiring a minimum spec Dell Blade server, which costs 10,000 to procure, and then install, have the necessary racking, aircon, etc. And it's usually followed by the ease of scale up and scale down. Now, people tend to focus on the scale down piece, not so much so on the scale up. So let's say I've got you at that, and you're going on this cloud journey, and it sounds like it's infrastructure because you're talking compute and storage. There are things that people fail to consider or watch, which can quickly cause their cost to escalate. Sometimes getting something so easy runs the risk of people being provided with servers and storage we simply wouldn't consider in an on-premise world because it's so easy. I've seen instances where it simply doesn't make sense. We've got developers get a fully scaled production server environment, while what they needed was a fraction of production for their development. Why? Because it was easy. What I always point out to people is to consider is how many or how much on-premise compute power is run on dev and test environments needlessly running on a Sunday morning in October in London, Dublin, Belfast. Yes, cloud means that it's much easier to automate and switch on and off these, but it doesn't happen unless you enforce the policies on your cloud instances. So maybe Monday to Friday, 8 to 8 is, what's appropriate for all your compute development instances. It is pay as you go, it is metered, and if you don't, it will creep up. And this is the rudimentary management pieces and topics that I've touched on. You need to now consider in your cloud environment more widely the training skills for IT and operations team, which I'll return to in consideration 5. Coming back to the point of metered and pay-as-you-go, again, this is very much dependent on the cloud service you're procuring. So if we take, and I have an example here for Oracle platform services, if we procure using a model Oracle regularly use called Cloud Credit Monthly or Universal Credit Monthly Flex, then you cannot easily scale up and scale down. You have to anticipate and plan ahead. If you want true scale up and scale down, then you need to go for pay-as-you-go, but this will be based on a higher flat rate for the service. And then if you go with PaaS, for example, for database, the price is different if you bring your own database license versus you not. So the point is, without trying to understand or get into the detail of that too much, is don't simply look at the cost and assume that is what you will procure at. So you look at a list price and say, well, it's 50, I said £50 per OCPU, and multiply it and off we go. There are variables to consider to get what is right for you. I know I didn't mention SaaS subscriptions here, which is a completely different subscription model. I suppose going back to planning ahead and the myth of scale up, scale down, in lots of enterprises, you might not want that, okay? Indeed, it could be chaos if you're in that situation that you're scaling up and scaling down. And also remember, in scale up, scale down, you need to consider the software components, perhaps the licenses that you have on that infrastructure that you're scaling up and down. Because unless these scale in tandem, then you lose some of the potential cost savings, or you open up license risk. And finally, a last point on cost for cloud, remember now that with SaaS as the example, you're now in a new budget and spend model for IT. The cyclical nature on-premise spend, sweat, replace, versus SaaS, which is typically expands as usage grows, period. This is something you as a CIO or CFO need to be aware of and plan into your budgets and planning cycles going forward. Will you need to increase your future OPEX and move CAPEX to a CAPEX head to an OPEX head? So the takeaway from this third one, be rigorous in considering your environments, your uptime, and your needs. Consider all the components of your solution. Read the commercial terms of the cloud providers, and consider the ramifications of cloud expenditure in the wider organizational spend. The cloud is more secure. The cloud is more secure. Absolutely agree with this statement. And hyperscale providers like Oracle, Microsoft, and AWS invest millions in it and host some of the most security conscious and aware organizations in the world on their clouds, period. But this probably goes back very much to point one, and who's responsible for what? So what does Oracle, so as an example, what does Oracle attest to? So many logos and you will see here, seeing no doubt, and your security experts would like and insist on seeing. Not only are the data centers accredited, they use secure development methods, tools, they've got third-party independent audits. So really they go right through it as regards security. However, all that security can be sidelined, and it can be sidelined by you. You need to think about stuff like security between you and Oracle. What security do you need? That's not Oracle's responsibility. For platform and infrastructure services where you introduce or deploy components, that's on you. Let me read Oracle's disclaimer in their security policy here to avoid doubt. Oracle does not assess or test any components, including non-Oracle applications, non-Oracle databases, or other non-Oracle software code or data as may be applicable that you manage through or introduce into, including introduction through your development in or creation in the Oracle services, the customer components. This policy does not address or provide any right to conduct testing of any third-party materials included in the customer components. So you introduce it into the cloud, you develop it, you're responsible for the security, and you are not allowed to run security testing on those. In addition, there are lots of ways for securing of ports, tenancies, gateways that you can compromise the integrity of systems you deploy, regardless of whose cloud you use. So yes, some of your security headaches go away, but is not a panacea for all items. And again, the level of cloud, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS will determine where the greater degree of responsibility for you lies. So take away from this one, read and understand the cloud provider's corresponding security commitments. Trust what the cloud provider does, but verify. Focus on your responsibilities. Use your internal, external security expertise. And I guess to talk about trust, don't try to double think or rethink or try to constantly try to re-engineer the security of the cloud providers. Focus on what you have to do. And last, to top it off, when you implement cloud to support your business, it is much more than just a technology choice you're making. And that in many ways, in my view, is the benefit of cloud if done well. If you can affect much more of your business and all for the better if it's planned well. It will affect how people, technical and business in your organization work, how your IT systems and potentially your business process work. And certainly for a team who support your business solutions that will be underpinned by cloud, they will definitely need new ways of working, skills and tools. And this is what I want to focus on in the last fifth consideration. So key to take away from this one, as I go through it, for SaaS as an application you implement, for example, it is more than application change management. It isn't just new screens and new functionality. It offers opportunity and requires much broader organization-wide change. So let's look at how IT are affected by cloud. So what I have here is a somewhat traditional or current view of an IT organization in many ways and places today. Some or all of the boxes maybe outsourced to ourselves, for example, but broadly the structures would have been similar. So let's look at the infrastructure side of this for a moment. When you look at this maybe simplified view, for example, for a SaaS implementation, we can see that boundaries exist that should now no longer exist. For example, the database and server storage team does not play its traditional role, if any role in a SaaS implementation, as this is now the responsibility and domain of the cloud service provider. Most definitely, as we discussed earlier, is imperative that the networks and security teams skills would be required to help in securing and plumbing all the integrations and components that you're responsible for in the SaaS world. But generally, the risk in maintaining this view or type of IT organization is that it will become sidetracked by the business in the drive to implement the SaaS solution. I hope from the four previous points, it's clear there are considerations in cloud that we need to bring IT along collaboratively with the business to address these and ultimately get the best outcome for your organization. And at times, this oversimplification of cloud by cloud providers can be as much to secure a cloud deal at any cost. I mean, they want IT to be sidelined, divide and conquer, if you will. This is never a good idea, but neither should IT be the blocker for the sake of progress. So here's a suggested model or one type of model you could implement. And it's to implement a collaborative team and a structure in your organization. And this collaborative team brings your business and your IT or IT support provider or partner, if that's a version 1, for example. It leads and focuses on architecting the best cloud solution, business and IT for you. It treats cloud seriously and implements a center of excellence, creates a shared ownership team under the center of excellence that combines these two groups. The team then they can be the pioneers and help across other parts of the business by bringing the cloud adoption and change management more widely. So do it once, do it well, and repeat. Undoubtedly, for IT, there are impacts on roles. And yes, certainly some IT roles will reduce, evolve, and increase importance. For example, you see the table I have here for SaaS, the role of DBA in terms of database administration will reduce in support and maintenance, while the role of a middleware administrator in integration will invariably increase or be a new role for your organization, one well suited to a DBA changing role. Core programming skills may decrease with SaaS, but the ability to configure and perhaps build extensions using PaaS solutions, that'll be a required skill. So many roles will evolve, and there'll be some new roles too. Service procurement and contract management, focusing more on management and governance of your cloud procurement contracts and consumption will become key. Cloud integration capability, both to and from on-premise and intra-cloud. As we move to more bespoke application and deployment to cloud, full stack development and implementation skills will become key. Understanding how to translate fully from user requirements into code deployment, secured and integrated and automated CI/CD into your wider IT ecosystem, that will become an important role. And finally, probably most importantly, citizen developers. IT should be supporting the drive of the business developer through the use of low-code tools, take it Oracle's Visual Builder Cloud Service, Power Apps, Mendix. It's pretty much that analogy, the Chinese proverb of, you give a poor man a fish and you feed him for a day, you teach him to fish, and you give him an occupation that will feed him for a lifetime. So support the business so that they can do their fishing, in my view, should be encouraged with cloud, and IT should be encouraging and helping business in that regard. So last point, takeaway from point 5, collaboration across functions is important for cloud success. Roles will evolve and change, accept it, and leverage the benefit it brings. And implement a cloud center of excellence in some form that architects, leads best practice and supports adoption. So, in conclusion, that were my 5. For me, and I think generally the future is cloud. Think about the wider implications and benefits of cloud for your organization. Think about beyond the demonstration and glossy pieces. What will it mean for you? It does bring significant transformational advantage across business and IT. When you're engaging on cloud, ask questions, ask lots of them, and none of them are silly questions. So I've given the 5 considerations. SaaS delivers an end-to-end. Cloud provider manages it all. Cloud is lower cost to implement, run, and operate. The cloud is more secure. Cloud means less work for IT. I'm going to give you a 6th one. If you felt there was something useful in the presentation, at the risk of making you feel like our friends behind the castle wall, do engage, please engage the version 1 team. If there's nothing that I find more disappointing, it's when a customer has embarked on a cloud journey and not sought out the advice or guidance. Sometimes resetting and realigning expectations at a later point is so much harder than making minor corrections and clarifications as we embark on a journey earlier in the journey. And remember, version 1 is and always will be customer first. So that's me. I hope you found the presentation useful. I look forward to catching up with you all very soon.